Oh my gosh, you guys. I just called my mom for this news. I was just working and decided to check this and just called my mom. Hopefully she answers.
Your call has been forwarded.
Oh no, this is a moment. You guys. I was just diagnosed with ADHD. There it is. Wow.
This one's for the lovers. If you're out there, let me hear you say, yeah, 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 yeah. This one's for the lovers. If you're out there, let me hear you say, yeah, 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 yeah. One more time.
Beautiful people, and welcome to my channel. My name is Brynja and I'm super excited for today's video. Today's video is something that is very close to my heart. In today's video, I will be sharing several parts of my journey with ADHD. So I'll be sharing what it was like to get diagnosed as an adult, what it was like to get diagnosed as a woman, as well as some tools, resources, and coping strategies that you can use if you have ADHD or you think you have ADHD. So first, disclaimer, I will say, bear with me. This is not the easiest video for me to do. It's very different than the videos that I do on my channel typically, but I do plan to do a lot more videos around ADHD because I was recently diagnosed. Now we're coming right up on a month. Today is January 10th and I believe I was diagnosed on December 12th. So it's still pretty fresh for me, not in a negative way, just in a like taking it all in way. But I felt called to share this video because I hope that someone out there can find it useful, relatable, validating, and reassuring if you're on a similar journey too. If you see me looking or you see anything peeking over, I do have my laptop with me. I wrote like some notes. I'm breaking this video down into ADHD friendly parts just to make it easier to consume and digest. So part one is going to really just be all about what is ADHD, what are the different types, just so anyone who's watching can be clear. I feel like ADHD is super misunderstood. I have it and I even like misunderstood exactly what ADHD was because I feel like it shows up differently in the media and there are different types that aren't as like noticeable as others. In part two, I'm gonna share with you guys more about my past, my history, my childhood, some of the symptoms that I had growing up that I noticed. Many people are diagnosed, I would say most people are diagnosed with ADHD as a child. So I just want to share some of the reasons why I feel like I wasn't diagnosed as a child. Part three is going to be what ultimately led to me getting diagnosed. So like what symptoms did I start noticing as an adult? What was the situation that caused me to like pursue it instead of just living undiagnosed forever? In part four, I'm going to share my actual experience getting diagnosed. So the actual process, how I did it, and how I felt as I was going through the process and after I got my results, and if I regretted it. Part five is going to be all about different treatment methods. So my views on stimulant medications versus alternative medicine and like more holistic methods. Part six is going to be how am I doing now? Like I said, I've been diagnosed now for about a month and I want to share some of the coping skills that I've learned so far to really help me to manage my ADHD and just kind of like how I'm settling into the diagnosis. So I have some funny stories about that. And then the last part is going to be what is next in my journey. So of course, you know, everything doesn't stop once you get diagnosed. Once you're diagnosed, you can learn to create systems that work better for you as a person. I got some ginger tea ready, so let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so what is ADHD and what are the types? So I want to share like the clinical definition. Just by the way, you guys, my smoke detector is chirping. I have put in a maintenance request, but I forgot to follow up. So yeah, it'll be chirping in the background every now and again. Hopefully it doesn't bother you guys too much. But anyway, so I wanted to give the clinical definition from the National Institute of Mental Health, as well as some other ways of understanding ADHD that I have learned over time. So ADHD is marked by an ongoing pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity and impulsivity that interferes with functioning and or development. So inattention means that a person has difficulty doing things like staying focused on a task, sustaining mental focus. So once you start the task, it's like sustaining it. Like it can start to feel kind of boring, or like you notice that you're getting distracted, like you're just having trouble really just staying put and staying on task. Inattention also has to do with staying organized. And it should be noted that these symptoms are not due to like defiance or lack of comprehension and understanding. It is literally like the brain distracts itself. Then when we say the term hyperactivity, hyperactivity means a person that may seem to move about constantly, including in situations where it's not appropriate, or the person excessively fidgets, tap, or talks. So you know how we see the fidget spinner situation? Those help with the hyperactivity from ADHD because it gives you something to do with your hands and it can channel some of that hyperactivity energy. With hyperactivity, it may also include extreme restlessness or talking excessively. And then impulsivity means a person may act without thinking or have difficulty with self-control. Impulsivity could also include a desire for immediate rewards instead of being able to delay gratification or delay the reward for something. So a person who is impulsive may interrupt other people or make important decisions without considering the long-term consequences of things. So that's one way of defining ADHD. Another way that ADHD can be defined or characterized is as a disruption in executive functioning. So executive function is related to the ability to plan, organize, self-motivate, regulate our emotions, have self-awareness, our ability to remember things, as well as self-control. So I've also seen ADHD defined as a deficit in those abilities. So there are 3 types of ADHD. The first type is primarily inattentive type. This is the type that I was diagnosed with, and that's where the person has like trouble focusing, staying on task, things like that. The second type is hyperactivity, impulsivity. So that's where you see that more hyperactive, like needing to move, fidget, feeling extremely restless and having difficulty with things like self-control, and that can show up in multiple ways. And then the third type is the combined types. So it's a combination of inattentiveness and that hyperactivity, impulsivity. So I was diagnosed with ADHD primarily inattentive type, but I also do have symptoms of hyperactivity, impulsivity. I have fidget spinners, I have fidget toys that were recommended to me by my therapist before I was even diagnosed with ADHD. So I do have a lot of like just, you know, get up and go sometimes too. So you may notice that I share some symptoms of that type as well. So the thing about ADHD that makes it tough to diagnose is that most people deal with a lot of these symptoms every now and again. Like if you talk to someone, many people lose their keys, many people get bored sometimes when it comes to work, many people have days where they don't feel motivated, many people procrastinate and forget things. But the difference when you have ADHD is the intensity, the severity, and the frequency of these symptoms, meaning that these symptoms, things like forgetting things, losing things, struggling to stay motivated, struggling to start tasks and complete tasks, hyperactivity, making impulsive decisions like impulsive spending decisions, other risky decisions. The difference with someone who has ADHD is it's not just like a bad day or like an off day, it's like a 24/7 thing. And it's a difference in the brain that actually makes it more difficult to function properly on a day-to-day basis. So speaking of that and why it can be a little bit hard to be diagnosed with ADHD, let's get into part 2, which is my history and childhood, as well as why my ADHD wasn't diagnosed until I was 29 years old, and reasons why, if you're watching this as an adult, your ADHD may have gone undiagnosed up till this point too. So looking back on my childhood, like when I think back on my childhood, there were actually a lot of symptoms of ADHD that just were overshadowed and dismissed for one reason or another. I do feel like a lot of this was because I was actually good in school and I was seen as like a good kid. I was able to follow directions. I was able to sit still for the most part. Also, I think there's something to be said about just being Black and the way that mental health is handled in the Black community, especially in the 90s when I was growing up. I think it's becoming a lot more of a conversation now, but as a Black person, I do think that a lot of parents don't want anything else labeled on their child to make like life hard for them. So I feel like some of that maybe could have been going on too, as well as just like a little bit of sweeping under the rug. You know, it's not really a big deal type of thing. So yeah, I was a good kid. I I did really well in school as far as like my actual grades. Definitely in elementary and high school, I was very like to myself, and I found a lot of validation through doing well in school. I got a lot of attention for doing well in school and things like that. So I feel like that helped me a lot to do well in school. Also, a lot of the behaviors were normalized in my household. So my household growing up was like a little bit, I don't want to say chaotic like in a negative sense, but it was chaotic in the sense that like when we spoke to each other, we bounced around from topic to topic. We cut each other off. We're like pretty lively when we're excited about things. Many of us could kind of be seen as like scatterbrained a little bit, as well as just like keeping up with like chores, and there wasn't a lot of consistency with those things. So a lot of the behaviors were normalized growing up in my household. It was just like kind of normal, you know what I mean? So for a while, I just saw myself as like scatterbrained. And when I talked to a lot of my family members, like we all tend to like bounce around from topic to topic pretty quickly. So it wasn't abnormal. Another reason why I feel like my ADHD went undiagnosed as a child, even as a younger adult, is because a lot of my symptoms were internalized or hidden. I had a lot of social anxiety growing up, throughout high school, throughout college, pretty much up until my last 9 to 5, where I had to like do a lot of public speaking, like do a lot of instructing a group. So like speaking in front of a lot of people, speaking in front of a judge during court. Like I feel like that really made me come out of my shell so much more. But before that, I had a lot of social anxiety. And even then I had, you know, social anxiety. So this social anxiety that I experienced led to a lot of masking. Masking is basically hiding your ADHD symptoms to seem more normal or regular. So growing up, and especially as I was like an adult and got out of my household and started like interacting with friends who would come over or people in college, I started to notice and recognize that I was different than other people. I was different in a lot of ways, and I saw things very differently, and I struggled with things that seemed very easy for other people. So I started to like hide some of those things that made me different in order to fit in. So what this may look like is I'm a pretty messy person, you guys, and I don't quite notice that things are messy. Like my tolerance for mess has lowered because I now understand a lot better the effect that it has on my mental health. However, I have had periods of my life where I could literally have like the floor with clothes on it, all types of things on my bed. I still have a less intense version of that going on, but like this could last for weeks, months. Like sometimes it would last until someone came over my apartment. And so my most common way of masking was my apartment would be a complete mess before, let's say, someone came to visit me for the weekend or someone came over to hang out. And I would literally spend hours like rushing around, picking everything up. And it would go from like a complete mess to like daggone near spotless by the time they got there. So that was me hiding one of the things that I like dealt with. And it was very unrealistic just compared to who I really was as a person, which was a little on the messier, clutterier. Is that a word? Clutterier, on the messier, more cluttery. I think cluttery is a word. Hold on. Cluttered. Cluttery actually is a word, by the way. But yeah, it was a little more on the cluttered side. So it was unrealistic for me to do that, and I was hiding a part of myself, which I learned that you should, you know, try not to do as much as possible, especially when it comes with your friends. What would have been a little more realistic in that moment was just to build better habits that allowed it to be like manageable, and then maybe do a light pickup, but not like make it spotless. Like that's not realistic, and it kept me from inviting people over because I felt like I had to do that and all of that. So that was a huge example of me like masking my traits. Some of the symptoms that I had, I hid. Struggling to get things done and not feeling as motivated to like do chores, clean, do the dishes. Like a lot of those behaviors to neurotypical people, to society, can be seen as lazy. So I did not want to show those things. I didn't want to be judged for struggling with those things. So I found myself masking quite a bit. And speaking of masking, studies showed that women with ADHD are more likely to self-diagnose their symptoms because they're not symptoms that everyone sees. It's a lot more socially acceptable for women to be like pretty and poised and put together. And so there can be that pressure to be that way. And so not only are women more prone prone to masking their symptoms with ADHD, but women are more likely to self-diagnose and more likely to be diagnosed later on in life. Also, because of just the masking and society's expectations of women and things like that, women are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD, primarily inattentive type, instead of the hyperactivity impulsivity type. So in women, the symptoms of ADHD present themselves more so internally than externally. And I find that so interesting because I think a lot of that just has to do with socialization and the expectations on how women are acting versus men. And the fact that growing up in school, you mostly saw boys like acting up, and it's the whole like boys will be boys type of idea, but you didn't really see girls as much like acting out, you know, in school. It's just not as socially accepted. And so I think that that's just interesting as well to mention. If you are a woman with ADHD, some of the reasons why you may not have been diagnosed until later in life. But getting back to my story, looking back now, there were a lot of things going on in my childhood. So one of the main symptoms that I had as a child is that I constantly lost things. This still happens as an adult. But everything from homework, paperwork, and even things that I cared a lot about. Like I had this thing back in my day called the Nintendo DS, like a little handheld Nintendo. I loved that thing and I would misplace it and my parents would be so pissed off at me. I think we always ended up finding it because I have it now in my possession, but I would leave it random places. I wouldn't be able to remember where I had put it down, and yeah, it was just tough. Also, as a child, I waited until the last day to do my things, to do my projects. I can remember times where I had waited till the very last day before the project is due to start it. Literally, like I remember I remember having poster projects and like scrapbook projects, and they would always come out so great in the end, but I could not for the life of me do them ahead of time. I would always wait till the last day, and my mom would always stay up with me all night. She'd be falling asleep. It'd be like 3 in the morning and I'd be like, Mom, look at this. And she's like, yeah, baby, yeah. And she's like knocked out and I'm up till 5 in the morning doing my projects every single time without fail. I finished them, which is why it was hidden from my teachers, but I waited the last minute pretty much every single time. The third symptom that I experienced as a child, and this is in line with like internalizing your symptoms, I always had a very busy brain. Like my brain always went a mile a minute. And I remember asking my mom as a child, like, I think a lot. Like what's up with that? Is that like normal? I feel like I could recognize that something about that was like a little intense. Like I thought a lot. Like my brain felt like it was constantly going. Yeah, you guys, there were a lot of reasons why even though there were some symptoms, I wasn't diagnosed as a child. I think that my symptoms, with them being internal, it wasn't something that was causing a disruption to other people. It was more so something that I was just struggling with, and so I just learned to live with it. Like I definitely brought it up to my parents. I brought up that I thought a lot. I brought up to my mom that I think I might have ADHD, but it didn't really go further. And not to get too deep, but that's something that my mom like apologized for. But I think it's just like one of those things where, you know, there's just so many factors that go into it, and if it's not something that is disrupting others, I can see why it might not be taken as like heavily for people, especially if they don't want any labels placed. So hopefully this is helpful to you if maybe you had some symptoms as a child but you weren't diagnosed. Those were some of the reasons why I wasn't. So next, speaking of all the symptoms, let's talk about what ultimately led to me getting diagnosed at 29. So what made me actually pursue this diagnosis instead of just living with ADHD undiagnosed forever and ever? So why now? All right, so currently I am a full-time entrepreneur. I am a certified life coach, business coach, as well as a content creator. And I worked really hard to get here. I was working in a 9-to-5 that I just didn't love anymore. My background is in mental health, which I do think is ironic. I think I pursued it because of what I noticed as a child, and it just resonated with me, trying to figure out my own brain. But yeah, I worked hard to get here. I like worked really hard to be able to transition from my full-time job to being able to do coaching full-time. And I absolutely love what I do. I love being an entrepreneur. I love coaching. So a lot of this happened in 2022 where it became apparent to me. I'm in my first full year of full-time entrepreneurship. I love what I do. So the question started to become, why am I struggling so hard to do it? Like, why am I struggling to feel motivated? Why am I struggling to focus on the different tasks that are related? Like, I had times where I would be working on a project in my business and I would think that, wow, maybe you just don't want to do this, you know? Like, but it's like in my heart, like, I know that I want to do this, you know? I love making content. I love filming. I love editing. Why are those things hard for me? I noticed that I would set aside time to work to complete my projects. I would go to the coffee shop, I would sit at my desk, and I would say, okay, for this amount of time, I'm gonna work on this. I'll use creating my course as an example because this is one of the things that I was struggling with. I was working on this bonus module, and as I was working on it, I just found myself getting incredibly sidetracked. I would literally get distracted before I even noticed I was distracted. So I was extremely easily distracted. I had an extreme lack of focus. Like, I could probably go 15 to 20 minutes until I had a compulsion to like Google something or get up and make some tea or just do something else. It was just a struggle. I also found myself making really impulsive decisions in my business, as well as impulsive decisions with spending. I came into more money than I think I've ever had at one time, and I struggled to really manage it well. I would buy things from an impulsive standpoint, like just go on Amazon and buy it. I would literally like have a thought, go on Amazon, find something related, buy it, then forget about it. And once it got here, like 2 days later, I still have stuff sitting by my front door that I bought impulsively that hasn't even been opened. So there was some impulsive spending going on, which of course, as an entrepreneur, you have to be very, very careful with your expenses versus the income that you're bringing in. Also, I noticed that I would have issues prioritizing what is most important for me to work on right now. Everything seemed the same level of importance. My brain wasn't able to understand what I should be focusing on to really move the needle forward in my business. It struggled to understand what I should be doing with my time, what's most important to me right now, what's important to me to do on a day-to-day to like build healthy habits to actually get me toward my goals. What it looked like is I would go to the coffee shop and I would say, okay, today I want to outline a YouTube video. But instead I would end up getting lost in a sea of emails and Googling random things, getting lost in just randomness, and then at the end of the day I would have sat at the coffee shop for like 4 hours and I still would not have outlined that video. And better yet, I probably spent like the last 10 minutes thinking about outlining the video, and I was like, well, it's about time for me to leave. I'm getting hungry, I'm just gonna leave. And that happened day after day after day after day after day after day after day for like the whole of last year. So it's not to say that I didn't get anything done in my business. I did, but most of it was related to my clients because that is a built-in motivation for me. When I'm about to go and see someone, I want to make sure that everything is done. I had major issues with planning and organizing, like on every level, from planning out my day-to-day to planning out projects to planning out videos. I would get bored really easily, and after a week or 2 or 3, I would have this intense desire to change things, even if they worked just fine. So this made it really hard to build consistent systems in my business and to really get the full benefits of creating routines, habits, and systems. So instead of building up a foundation and then enjoying the benefits of that routine, I would start building the foundation and then get bored, and then go to building another foundation of something else and then get bored with that and then go to another foundation. And so I would never really get to like ride that wave of just all the benefits of things. Also, I had very creative ideas, but very low execution. So I had lots of ideas bouncing around. I would change the way that I wanted to do things like every couple of weeks, even if it worked fine. And I just found myself having lots of awesome ideas, but not really being able to execute. And then lastly, as a content creator, I wanted to make a lot more content, but I found myself masking and trying to hide parts of myself to fit into the image of what I thought a life coach should look like, which drove me absolutely crazy. So all of these things were going on top of all of the stuff that I've just always dealt with, which are things like losing my keys. I have misplaced my keys in my freezer before, and it has driven me crazy because I needed to go and I was running late, only to find out that my keys were in the freezer. So things like that happen, and they've always happened. I've always like kind of struggled with like keeping up with chores and clutter and things like that, but I can live with that stuff. However, now we're talking about my livelihood, and now we're talking about putting myself at risk of not being able to do something that I really worked hard for and really love. I built my coaching business from the ground up, and I don't want to lose it, but I was struggling so badly. And so that is what drove me to start doing research on ADHD. So ADHD is something that from when I was young, like I said, I told my mom that I think I might have it. I've labeled myself since I was younger as scatterbrained and ditzy and like talkative and all of these things. I always had an idea, even as an adult, I would joke around and say like, I think I have ADHD, like for real, I think I have ADHD, but I never pursued it until I was at risk of losing my business. Until I was at risk of losing my business, baby, and I did not want that to happen. So this drove me to start doing research. I knew something was off, and I became like desperate to figure out what was going on so that I could save my business. But y'all, ultimately it was really a mess. It's not where it was just like, oh, I'm forgetting this thing, or oh, I'm procrastinating today. It's like I was forgetting things left and right, making mistakes left and right, not completing tasks, but I cared a lot and I was trying really hard to manage and to get things done, and it just wasn't happening. This was an incredibly confusing and frustrating experience for me. It was probably one of the most confusing and frustrating things I have ever dealt with in my life, was trying to make the change to be more organized and realizing that I just was almost incapable of doing it. And also I want to share that I would look around and I would just notice like, how can other people do so much more than me? Another thing that I didn't mention is that I would feel tired. Like I would go to the coffee shop, write those 2 emails that I would actually get done, and I would feel tired. Like I had really done a lot. I just felt tired. I would do like 1 or 2 things and feel like I was done for the day. And I would wonder, how can other entrepreneurs that I see get so much more done? Like people would do like day in the lives of an entrepreneur, and I'm like, they're doing so much in one day consistently, and I don't feel like I have the energy to do that or the motivation to like do all of those things. So yeah, basically all of the symptoms of my ADHD just started completely raging as an entrepreneur. When I was working in the office, I had structure, I had supervision from my boss, I had accountability from my coworkers. My boss would ask me like what I was getting up to, what I was accomplishing. They would assign me tasks. I didn't have to think about what was important. People were just telling me. Coworkers would ask me how things were going throughout the day, and sometimes they would be depending on me to get things done. So that really like kept me in line and like kept me motivated to do things, even if I didn't feel like doing them. So there was the structure, the supervision, the accountability that was built into working the 9 to 5, working in an office full of other people. But as an entrepreneur working from home, being my own boss, I didn't have any of that. I was my own boss, but my boss was a person with ADHD, a person who was forgetful and, you know, scattered and had trouble focusing and organizing and prioritizing. So I started feeling like each day was more about responding to requests, like responding to those emails and limiting disasters, like trying to finish things last minute, instead of consistently moving toward my goals and building habits, building systems, and making like progress toward my goals. So that's what led me to actually pursue a diagnosis. Let's talk about my experience getting diagnosed. So in this part, I want to share with you guys the process that I went through, how I got diagnosed, and how I felt once that happened. In this part, I'm going to insert a couple of clips of when I was getting diagnosed, just so y'all can see. I was vlogging on the day that I completed my assessment and when I actually got the results back. So I chose telehealth after I was having so much of that struggle with my business. I noticed that I wasn't showing up in the way that I was supposed to, and it was affecting the success of my business. I did a ton of research on ADHD. I watched so many videos on ADHD, and after a while I became pretty sure that I had it. And that's why I wanted to define what ADHD was in the beginning of this video, because I realized that even though I had ADHD and even though I, you know, had kind of thought that I had it, it's different than what I thought it was. I didn't know that there was a version that was just like primarily inattentive type. I, like many other people, have only heard of like the hyperactive hyperactivity part of ADHD. When I thought of ADHD, I thought of little boy in school jumping from desk to desk, super hyperactive, always getting in trouble, not doing his homework. That's what I thought of. Little boy doing that. I did not think of grown Black woman. You know, it's just, that's not what comes to my mind with someone with ADHD. So I had to learn what ADHD actually looks like. And I also did research on how it presents in girls versus boys. So by the time I did all of that research, I was like, yeah, I think you got it. And I think you got it bad, girl. So I chose telehealth to get diagnosed. I wanted to get diagnosed as quickly as possible just to ease my mind because it started to become like an obsession. It was all that I could think about. I started becoming like, okay, I'm trying to move forward, but I think I can't because I have ADHD. So I needed to satisfy that curiosity and to just basically validate myself. But wait times for ADHD diagnoses are notoriously long. So I felt like I could kind of find a way around that. Also, I just felt like it was what was most comfortable and convenient for me at this point in my journey. So I went through a website called ADHD Online to get my evaluation, and I'll put their information in the description box below. But ADHD Online provides evaluation and diagnostic services so they can give you a diagnosis, as well as medication management and counseling. So I signed up, I paid the evaluation and assessment fee, and I took the assessment. I ended up getting my results really quickly, like within one full day. And I was just like, girl, you are ADHD AF. Like, it's clear as day that you have it. So that's who I went through and how I got diagnosed. I want to share with you guys a little bit about the assessment. So when you're taking the assessment, make sure you have a snack, a delicious beverage. It took me like 5 hours to actually complete it. I did not expect it to take that long. I do hear that people going in office, it takes them like 3 hours to go through it with the psychiatrist. So it's a big assessment. I have taken the quick tests for ADHD, like the quick test online, but this one was extremely in-depth. It asked a lot about my childhood. It asked a lot about my lifestyle. It asked a lot about the things that I struggle with. I completed it with my mom so she could help me with the answers about my childhood. I asked her about like, did you notice anything about my habits around completing homework and things like that? And I will say that the assessment seemed to be very much so catered to kids. And this is because even though I was diagnosed as an adult, ADHD is a lifelong chronic brain disorder. So it's something that you actually experience from the time that you are born. And it's diagnosed most often in children. So it was really helpful to have my mom there with me. I would highly recommend you to bring like a parent or someone who was around when you were growing up to help you to answer the assessment. And that's if you're doing it online or if you're going into an office and getting your evaluation that way. But yeah, the assessment was super in-depth. It took me 5 hours to complete. It asked me so many things. It asked me about my childhood. It asked me about my primary symptoms. It also asked me a lot of questions to rule out other mental health disorders. So I could tell that the assessment wanted to make sure that the symptoms that I was experiencing wasn't because of something else like bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, depression, things like that, because it seems like some of the symptoms really do overlap. I have dealt a lot with anxiety, but I'm in a space now where I have kind of built a life that doesn't make me super anxious. But I did love that they were able to rule those out, because when I was taking the assessment, I'm like, I just need to know what's going on. Like, if it is, you know, anxiety and I'm just super stressed, like, I need to know what's going on. So after I did the assessment, within 48 hours, I had the results. So you guys, when I got the results and it said that I had ADHD and it came so quickly, I felt so relieved and I felt incredibly validated, because I waited so long to take this test, and it's something that I kind of knew for myself all this time. And I just felt in that moment a sense of self-love and a sense of feeling proud of myself for pursuing it, and also a sense of being excited for what was to come now that I knew. But I did have some mixed feelings, because I also felt mixed feelings as far as like what life could have been if I had been diagnosed when I was younger, maybe as a child. So there was some mixed feelings going on there. But ultimately I felt hopeful, validated, relieved that I finally knew what was going on, and just happy and proud of myself, because I literally had people saying like, you don't have it. And it's like, people are not trying to be mean, but it's just not something that affects other people that they just like see. It's something that was happening inside of me. So I felt really, really proud and really connected to myself for pursuing it. So do I regret getting diagnosed? I absolutely do not regret it at all. I honestly kind of wish that I had gotten diagnosed when I was much younger, but the past is the past. I'm so happy and proud of myself for pursuing the diagnosis, for going through with the process. It was a little bit scary, but the validation that I feel, the peace that I feel from getting the diagnosis is so worth it. And it's different like saying, I think I got ADHD, and like joking about it, and actually getting a proper diagnosis and finding out that you have it. That opened me up to so many other resources that I would not have thought were important if I didn't actually know that I had it for sure, if that makes sense. So now I'm able to do things that are specific to people with ADHD and that are shown to help people with ADHD from a different level of confidence of knowing that I have it versus just like, I think I have it. Like, you get what I mean? Those are two different vibes. So I feel so good about it. I would highly recommend, if you think that you may have ADHD, to go ahead and get the assessment, get that peace of mind that comes with getting an assessment, and find out if you have it or if it's something else that's going on, because you will probably feel so seen and so validated and so relieved by just figuring your ish out. So getting diagnosed, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. So now let's get into treatment for ADHD. Here I want to talk about some of the treatment options that are available for people with ADHD, as well as my thoughts on stimulant medications versus alternative medicines and holistic methods. I do want to put a disclaimer here that I am not a doctor. I am still very early in my journey and I don't know everything, but I have done a lot of research and have found some things that are working for me so far. So treatments for ADHD include stimulant medications. So for example, medications like Adderall, Ritalin, Concerta. Other treatment options include counseling, talk therapy. Some people do brain training exercises to actually train their brain to act a certain way. And then there are other like alternative medicines and more holistic routes, like using various vitamins and supplements that actually help with some of the symptoms of ADHD, that provide more clarity, focus, energy, things like that. And then you don't want to forget like the daily things that, you know, the doctor always tells us to do, like paying close attention to your diet, because food and ADHD are very closely related. Food has a huge effect on the brain. So it's important to also look at things like diet. Exercise is great for people with ADHD because it gets those endorphins flowing. It also gets out a lot of that like energy that people with ADHD can have. So diet, exercise, nutrition, as well as sleep. All of those things are incredibly important to take care of if you have ADHD and just in general, right? But I do want to share that there is no like one size fits all cure for ADHD. Every person with ADHD is different, and so every person will need a different set of intervention. So I definitely encourage you, if you're watching, don't be afraid to try different things and do your research and see what's out there. I have met some really cool people who have tried some really cool things, especially when it comes to all of the supplements that are out there. Every person will respond differently to the different interventions that are available. So in this video, I want to share with you guys a few of the interventions that I have tried that have helped me. So currently I am taking nootropics daily, and I will show you guys the ones that I'm taking. Hold on. So currently I am taking the Genius brand mushrooms. These have lion's mane in them. And these are what some people call like brain enhancers or cognitive enhancers. So they help to support energy, clarity, focus, also supports a healthy immune system, and it has brain boosting benefits for memory, cognitive function, and improved mood. So these work very well for me. When I was diagnosed, I knew that I now have access to being able to potentially be subscribed stimulant medications, but I just haven't been ready yet. I've more so been in the idea of, okay, let me like settle into the diagnosis. I'm not really a huge medication person just in general, so I was just like, let me kind of like settle into the diagnosis, get to know myself a little bit more, try some of the alternative medicines and some of the just like routines and structures that I can now place into my life, knowing that it is so much more important that I have that. Just now knowing that I thrive with more routine and structure. I'm not opposed to potentially trying stimulant medications in the future if it will help me to reach a different level, but I was like, let me just settle into the diagnosis and try some alternative medicines and more natural methods first. I want to like ease into it, you know what I mean? And I also found that some ADHD medications can affect things like my menstrual cycle, and so I just felt like I wanted to do more research before I actually tried a stimulant medication. I love the nootropics so far. I feel like they give me a very natural sense of energy, but at the same time it's like noticeable, because before, like I said, I would do 2 things in the day and like feel zapped of energy. Now I take 2 in the morning and 1 like around 4 p.m. typically, just to give me that extra push for the rest of the day, and I can like go. Like I can go. Before, I would feel like this sense of chronic like fatigue where it would feel painful for me to like, but yeah, so nootropics have been really great for me early on in my journey. I will likely keep taking them until I feel like I want to try something else, but for right now these are like great for me. Meditation also really helps me. So meditation has been something that I have done for a long time. Years ago, when I was working a super stressful job, I found out that meditation helps me to center, feel grounded, to slow down a lot of the chatter that was in my brain. So meditation is definitely something that honestly changed my life. I plan on making a whole video just about meditation and mindfulness. It sounds counterintuitive to meditate because you have so much chatter. Like, it's not necessarily going to stop, but it at least gives you like a break. Meditation is like a vacation for the ADHD brain. Also, I hired an ADHD productivity coach. So I actually hired an ADHD productivity coach before I was professionally diagnosed with ADHD. I just had an inkling, like I said, I had an idea, and so talking to a coach was that first professional step for me. I guess maybe I wasn't quite ready to pursue a diagnosis. I didn't know of all the options out there, but I'm a coach. I believe in coaching. I've hired coaches several times before, and I felt like I needed someone to try to help me to just get more organized in my business. So I actually did that first before getting properly diagnosed. Having an ADHD productivity coach definitely helped me to normalize a lot of my behaviors and to understand that the way that I ran my business, the way that I lived my life, did not have to look like society's standards or neurotypical standards of like living my life. It just helped me to normalize myself, to really accept myself, and to love myself deeper, as well as it helped me to figure out some real life solutions that I could actually put into place to help me to function as an adult in my everyday life. So I loved hiring an ADHD productivity coach. Also, another thing that helps me manage my ADHD is diet and nutrition. So I noticed that some foods affect my brain very differently, and I experience different levels of clarity and focus with different foods. So if I just ate like a bunch of dairy, a bunch of like foods that are seen as a little more unhealthy, I noticed that I struggle with clarity, with focus, with my motivation levels. I can see a difference from when I'm eating fruits, vegetables, drinking my kombucha, taking care of my gut health. Like, there is a very noticeable difference with the foods that I eat. So one of the things that I do to manage my ADHD, if I really want to have more good brain days than bad, I make sure that I'm managing my diet and my nutrition in a healthy way. Also, things like exercise, movement, it releases endorphins. It allows us to get some of that pent up energy out, especially if you have the hyperactivity, impulsivity type. It releases dopamine, which is really important for ADHD brains. So movement is also super helpful too, as well as diet and nutrition. Also, as I mentioned earlier, those regular self-care things just help a lot. Getting a good amount of sleep, making sure that your stress is lowered. Stress can trigger ADHD symptoms, so be very careful of that. And then lastly, one of the things that I've really been using to manage my ADHD a lot better is making sure to have fun. The ADHD brain needs dopamine, it needs adventure, it needs like novelty and new things, it needs something exciting, it needs stimulation, it just needs dopamine. That's something I didn't mention before, is that ADHD brains need dopamine, they need fun, they need excitement, they need these things. And if you don't give your brain these things, then your brain starts to look for it in other ways. So if you're trying to do work and you haven't gotten the hits of dopamine that you need, then your brain will have trouble focusing on that work and it'll be looking for things to stimulate it. So you can take control of that by making sure that you are stimulating your brain regularly. And so for me, I have been making more of a point to incorporate fun, dancing, like random fun things, reading, word searches, like making sure that I'm going out and being with my friends. I need that balance in order for me to work, so that my brain is not searching for fun. So it's important for me to find ways to incorporate a lot of these things into my daily and weekly routine. So those are some of the ways that I am coping with and managing my symptoms of ADHD. So now let's talk about how I'm doing now. Now I have been diagnosed for about a month. It'll be a month in 2 days from the time that I filmed this video. And I want to share with you guys more of the coping skills that I've learned, as well as just how I feel about the diagnosis now that I've been like settling in. So now I've been learning more about ADHD and just getting to know how it affects me in my life. Like I said before, everyone with ADHD is different. And so I've been really just paying attention to that's my dog. I've been really just like paying attention to how it affects me in my life. I'll put some resources below that I can share with you guys. I love this one YouTube channel called How to ADHD. It's here on YouTube. I'll also link some of the people that I follow on Instagram who talk a lot about ADHD too. If you see this video, let them know that I sent you. But yeah, I've just been like gathering lots more research and knowledge about ADHD now that I know that I for sure have it. Also, I feel so much more seen. I feel like I have a better understanding of myself. Like I said, I feel more connected because I went through this entire journey for myself. I feel proud. I feel just much more connected with myself and much more real. I feel like I'm able to show up more as myself. I'm seeing things every day and just understanding who Brynja is as a person. And I'm learning not to hold myself up or pressure myself to like be held up to neurotypical standards as much. My house doesn't need to be spotless. It's okay if I ramble a little bit and if I talk a lot. It's okay that I'm a little quirky and like my brain processes things a little differently. It's okay that I forget stuff and that I lose things sometimes. It's okay if I show up everywhere late, no matter how hard I try. It's okay if I do all of these things. I have ADHD. That makes it a little bit harder to, you know, keep up with those things. And so now that I've been diagnosed and I know and I'm like learning myself, it's also coming with a higher sense of acceptance for just who I am and all of the little quirks about me. So there's a lot more self-love there versus before where I would just get mad at myself like, why can't you show up on time? Why aren't you focusing? Like, you really want this? Like, what's going on? There was just a lot of like bashing myself and being hard on myself. Yeah, with me getting diagnosed, I'm able to not do that as much and just love on myself a lot. Also, with being diagnosed, I can tell my friends about it. Of course, some people in my life understand more than others, but at least I can teach them more about me and not hide as many parts of myself from my friends and my family. So that's been another big benefit. I remember when I first got diagnosed, I was just like telling everyone like, I have ADHD, like I have ADHD. I have ADHD. Like, I do this because like I have ADHD. And I realized that I'm probably gonna slow down that because like I said, ADHD is sorely misunderstood. So a lot of people still don't understand it. You'd have to literally sit down and watch one of these videos and watch several videos to really understand it. So I did slow down a lot with that. But in the beginning, I was telling everybody. Another one that kind of ties into you know, just feeling seen, better understanding of myself is I have let go of a lot of the masking. This has been so relieving. I can be myself more and truly be seen by other people and loved despite my flaws. So for example, before I used to like run around and clean everything up and be stressed out. And just the other day, like I invited my friend up to my apartment and it's not that type, and she didn't really say anything negative about it. She was just like, your apartment is so cute and like just super sweet. So it just gives people a chance to love you for who you are and you truly get accepted for who you are, showing up as just who you are as a person. And there's nothing like that. There's nothing like being accepted for who you truly are. Another benefit of getting diagnosed, I feel like this is becoming like a benefits list. It was supposed to be how I'm doing now, but it's becoming like just the benefits of getting diagnosed and all of the lovely things that have happened. I am finding community. So one of the things that I have used that has helped me so much as an ADHD entrepreneur working from home is to have virtual co-working rooms. If you want to get something done, studies show that lots of people with ADHD benefit from something called body doubling. Body doubling is just having someone else like present, even virtually, it's okay, but it's having someone else present while you are trying to get something done, and they could either be doing the same thing that you're doing or doing something completely different. So I wanted to share with you guys that I joined these like virtual co-working spaces, these body doubling rooms, where there's just a group of people who start at the same time and work on whatever it is that they're working on. So I have started joining these almost every day, as long as I don't have like a session in the morning or a call in the morning. I hop on these like every day at 10 a.m. and I work, and we just like check in. And if you see my vlogs, you'll see me actually end them and like hear how it all goes down. But yeah, I hop on those and they have increased my productivity tremendously. I'm currently in one that was started for people with ADHD, and it's just freaking amazing. So yeah, so body doubling rooms, having community, it helps with masking, it helps with productivity. I can openly talk about my struggles with other people who have ADHD and not feel judged, and also hear their stories, and we can all just talk about things that if I was to tell someone with ADHD, it might sound very strange to them. They probably wouldn't get it. But just having that community, it means the world to me, and it has allowed me to really open up more about ADHD. So if you are watching this and you think you might have ADHD, or it's been confirmed or whatever, I would love to have you a part of my community. Please like this video and leave a comment and just let me know if this helped you. I would love to know that and say hi to you. Also, I shared that I've been taking the nootropics, which have helped me to just organize my thoughts, organize my life day to day. With those, I can plan better and I can plan ahead. So those have been helping me as well. And then lastly, like I said, I treat myself better. I'm kinder, I'm more compassionate. I feel motivated to figure myself out instead of just giving up, because I had a lot of tough days where I just wanted to give up, where I was beating myself up, where I didn't understand what was going on with me. I was frustrated, I was confused, it was hard. I now know that I'm not doing these things on purpose. I now know that my brain literally does not receive the same amount of dopamine and rewards that other people receive for doing things like doing dishes and chores. I would rather scroll on Instagram or TikTok for 30 minutes to 2 hours. Like, I would much rather procrastinate and do that all day instead of doing the boring stuff. So now I get like, it's not just a situation of just try harder. With the ADHD brain, there's literally a disruption in your dopamine getting from one place to the other. So now that I know that, I go easier on myself if I realize like I'm just not feeling motivated to do that thing, instead of like thinking that I'm lazy or thinking that like I need to try a little harder. I'm just kinder to myself. So lastly, what is next in my journey? Your journey doesn't stop at being diagnosed. So now I just want to continue to work on myself more, rather than working against myself. I want to build habits, systems, routines, and gain even more of an understanding of why I need these habits and routines. I now understand that I need structure. Like, ADHD brains need structure, despite how much our brains try to fight it. It's like your brain craves newness and it always like wants something new, but it thrives off of structure. So what this looks like for me is like, I'll start off with a planner and want a new planner in like 2 weeks, and now I know that I might just need to buy some new pens for the planner, or I might need to buy some like little stickies for the planner or something like that to give this sense of newness but still keep the planner. Also, things like incorporating more fun, like I was talking about, incorporating more movement, being kinder to myself, putting less pressure on myself to do things a certain way that mirrors the neurotypical way. Understanding that my brain does make things harder for me, but that does not mean that I'm going to give up. It just means that the path may look a little different. It may just mean that it may take me longer. It may just mean that I'm gonna make mistakes, but understanding that all of that is okay, because I have certain goals that I wanna accomplish, and it's okay if it takes me a little bit longer. Like, I now feel like I'm accepting myself more and knowing that those things are okay, rather than running myself ragged trying to keep up with neurotypical standards. Also, I am becoming more intentional about building community. So I want to join more groups specific to people with ADHD, and I also want to continue teaching my friends and even my coaching clients more about ADHD and how it affects my life. So yeah, you guys, for anyone who is just going through this journey, most likely if you're watching this video, you are probably someone who is thinking that maybe you do have ADHD, or maybe you're newly diagnosed, or maybe you've had it and you just thought the video was interesting as someone with adult ADHD. In whatever stage you are on your journey, I just want to give you some encouragement and tell you that it is so worth figuring this stuff out for yourself and getting diagnosed and finally getting a grasp of what exactly is going on. Finally getting diagnosed and getting a grasp and a better understanding of what was going on has been life-changing for me. Like, literally life-changing. ADHD is something that affects like every part of your life. You know, it's not something that is oh, it just affects me in my like personal life. No, it affected my business. Like, it affects my friendships, my relationships. And before I got diagnosed, before I really took it seriously, I didn't know why all of these things were happening. And so it turned into a self-loathing, of beating myself up when it didn't have to. It turned into me struggling with friendships, you know, struggling because sometimes I would forget to call friendships, or I would forget to call people who I was dating and get distracted, and they would think that I wasn't like interested in them. So it affects like so many little areas of your life. So it's life-changing to figure this out for yourself. Finding out that you have ADHD is similar to like putting glasses on for the first time. You see everything differently and more clearly. You like understand yourself better and why you do the things that you do, instead of just feeling confused and frustrated and beating yourself up for struggling with things or hiding yourself to try to fit in with society, when studies show that the ADHD brain literally processes things differently. So if you're watching this, I just want to encourage you. You got this. I'm going to put some resources below to help you along your journey. And yeah, that's all I have for today. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. Give me a thumbs up if you guys want me to make more videos about ADHD. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I might make a video about it, any questions related to medication. I'll probably do an update in the future because like I said, this is only a month after being diagnosed, so I might do updates in the future if I try any stimulant medications, or if I try some new nootropics, or if I notice some other things, learn some more coping skills, learn some more resources, and just sharing more of my experience in hopes that it can help you in your journey. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.